FOS TV is brought to you by the Lion's Den. The Den always has been and always will be about enjoying family and friends in an environment steeped in Happy Valley tradition. So come back to the Den, the perfect place to recall old memories while creating new ones.
Hi, this is Mark Brennan. Welcome to another edition of FOS TV, our weekly Joe Paterno press conference wrap. I'm joined by Pat Boland of ESPN Radio 1450 here in State College. Pat, we're here at Paternoville, and the first comment that you made is about the accommodations here.
Yeah, I tell you, in 2005, kids were staying in like Barbie tents that were probably cost about $10 at Walmart. Now they got first-rate camping gear. They certainly have upgraded here at Paternoville since this whole thing started a few years ago.
Yeah, it's they've definitely, I think, along with a laptop and your textbooks and pencils and whatever else you get, anymore you have to buy yourself a nice tent. It's Tuesday afternoon and there's already a lot of people here. I would say, a couple dozen tents at least. So people are amped up for this game, and that's one of the themes that Joe Paterno talked about this week. You only get so many of these big games, night games, prime time, and he's hoping that his team's able to go into this thing with a lot of fun, a lot of enthusiasm, and just enjoy it. Don't worry about there being pressure, must win, that sort of thing. Just enjoy the game.
What did he say? If you can't get excited for this one under the lights, then you shouldn't be playing ball at Penn State.
Yeah, and I'll be surprised if they don't come out and play with some enthusiasm, because typically they do, and this is obviously a Michigan team that's going to do some things offensively. Defensively, I think Penn State's going to be able to do some things, so I think we're going to have a high-scoring, fun game. Okay, I know we're beating around the bush here. Let's get right down to business. Rob Bolden, what's his status coming off of this thing, Pat?
Joe Paterno said, I don't think he'll go this week, but that could change because Bolden has to get more tests on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, and maybe those tests will say he's good to play. But right now, they're still taking a wait-and-see attitude. And he also said, you got to make sure that you have to protect the kid. You have to make sure that you take a cautious approach so he gets dinged on the head on Saturday night. Who knows what could happen?
Yeah, Bolden, obviously, everybody knows, sustained what was a concussion at Minnesota, came out in the second quarter, was replaced by Matt McGloin, and Kevin Newsom saw some action. In terms of Bolden, I think Joe's playing possum a little bit. I'm not saying that he's definitely going to play, but I think Joe wants to paint this thing as being as kind of up in the air as possible. And that's a great move. It's gamesmanship, makes Michigan not know what they're going to get. We do know this, that if there's any chance that this kid's going to be hurt, Penn State's always going to err on the side of caution. I don't think it's as done a deal as Joe seemed to make it out to be. I think that's some gamesmanship on his part.
Also, some gamesmanship by not really saying who the quarterback would be if Bolden can't go. He said it's going to be a competition this week between McGloin and Newsom, and may the best man win. But he really wouldn't give any details about what would happen if Bolden is on the bench again.
Well, he was asked in about 20 different ways, who would play, how do you think McGloin would play if he gets the start, and he kept saying it's going to be an open competition during the week. Whoever plays better will get the start, and all of that is only if Bolden's not ready to go. So the only thing we know that is that if Bolden's healthy, he's going to be the guy. From my perspective, I would be absolutely stunned if Bolden's unable to go. I'll be stunned if McGloin is not the starting quarterback. I just thought he acquitted himself better in that Minnesota game, did some things better, and I think he showed a lot of poise in a very tough situation coming in and stepping up.
And we could find out Thursday night on the radio show if Joe's happened to be asked that question in the latter part of the program, so you might want to tune into that 6:05 on Thursday night.
Yeah, I'll be surprised. I mean, definitely tune in. I'm not telling people not to tune into ESPN Radio 1450 to listen to the show on Thursday night or wherever you may be. But I'll be surprised if they don't let this thing be an open question, at least up until, right before the game, when we'll probably get a good idea what's going on. What we will learn then, and hopefully somebody has the common sense to ask whether he's practicing or not, because that's going to be, if he's practicing, I think that's a pretty good indication that Bolden's going to be the guy. What are some of the other things that came out from the press conference today, Pat, that stuck out to you?
Well, when he was asked about Evan Royster's legacy, Paterno said he's done a good job, and that's about it. And I was surprised to hear that. You would think he would have said a little bit more, but that's all that came from Joe's mouth. And I was surprised to hear so little about a guy that's going to set one of the most important records in the Penn State record book.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of become an albatross, this record, much like Joe Paterno's all-time wins record. I think we may have mentioned this last week. It's just kind of strange. There's something going on there. I don't know what it is. I don't want to speculate, but to have a player approaching Kurt Warner's all-time rushing record and to really just be so curt in your answer, I was kind of, stunned by that. But at the same time, he was asked about Silas Redd, and I think he did his best to diffuse the notion that Silas Redd is now the clear-cut second-team tailback. He said that Silas Redd and Stephon Green are both very good players. Royster's obviously the key guy, but I wonder if he caught something, if Stephon Green didn't express some displeasure over the way the Minnesota game unfolded, because Silas Redd looked to me like he's a second-team guy, and as well as he's playing, I'd be surprised, with all due respect to Stephon, who I like and think is a great athlete. Boy, Silas Redd sure seems to bring something different to the table.
And he'll excite this crowd that'll be here on Saturday night. He's an exciting player. Probably, Bolden's exciting, but I tell you, Silas Redd just seems to have that extra something that makes him special. I can't wait to see him get into a game where he gets 10 to 15 carries to really make things happen. He never really has been in the flow of a game this year. And a guy with his talents, I think he deserves a little bit better treatment by the coaches.
Yeah, in terms of some of the Penn State housekeeping stuff, Joe was asked about Chaz Powell from a reporter down in York, and Chaz Powell definitely gets more questions about a guy who doesn't play a whole heck of a lot than anybody, and he actually had a really good line saying, "What are you? Chaz Powell needs an advertising PR person or something like that." He said Chaz Powell's playing better, but he's been moved over to cornerback. With the way Stephon Morris struggled a little bit against Minnesota, I think there are clear questions on whether Powell might see more action. Joe said that they do expect to play him some more, but that every time Joe talks about Chaz Powell, he mentions a lack of focus and not really being dialed into things, and he mentioned that again today. So that's a very tough area. If you can't make little mistakes at cornerback, or they're going to become big mistakes. I think Tom Bradley always says there's only one line. You have the defensive line linebackers. The only line behind the secondary is the goal line. So you can't. There's really no margin for error. In terms of some other housekeeping things, what jumped out at you?
Paterno said Denard Robinson not going to stop him. That means that he must be a special player. I don't really see them stopping him much at all. He's probably going to stop himself with fumbles or interceptions, but I think this guy is that good that he can run through a Penn State defense that's shown to be pretty porous this year. It could be a shootout on Saturday night. I don't know what you think. I think we're going to see lots of points.
Yeah, we have some ambient sound with buses going by, but that's what it's like when you're out here at Paternoville. Hey, the thing about Denard Robinson, Pat, he's averaging more total yards per game than Penn State is as a team. And he's also had a week off to get fresh, get ready to go. I don't think he's going to run all over Penn State and just embarrass them, but I do think this is going to be a shootout and a fun game and a high-scoring game. There was not a lot of talk about the Michigan defense. Stefan Wisniewski touched on it a little bit, saying they played at 3-5, whatever it is, and that it is a different look than they've seen. But that's been a defense that's really struggled, and this should be another opportunity for that Penn State offense, which struggled up through last week, to continue to get better and get things in gear. From my perspective, last week against Minnesota was, I think, the first time the special teams were a little bit of a liability, so they're going to have to tighten that up as well.
And one last thing from me, Pete Massaro said that in practice this week, Evan Lewis on Monday played Denard Robinson. And I was looking at my roster to see who Evan Lewis was. I think he's a wide receiver or defensive back, a walk-on kid from Gettysburg.
Yeah, he's a very athletic kid, did a lot of things at Gettysburg, was an all-state type pick. He may have even punted, but he's played at a lot of different spots at Penn State. Wide receiver, he's played cornerback. Don't know that he's ever going to be a full-time player, but it's good to have somebody out there. The other thing that jumped out that we actually absolutely have to hit on, Joe said that Zerba, the tight end, is done for the year, and more importantly, and this isn't to take away from Zerba, but Curtis Drake is done for the year. Drake was a guy that if he had come back to whatever extent, you would think he could play a guy like Robinson on the foreign team. But both of those guys done for the year. Stennis Penn State is at tight end. It hurts with Zerba, and obviously Drake being such an outstanding multi-purpose threat. The good news is Drake has a red shirt. Zerba does not.
And speaking of tight end, young Cadogan is listed as the third or fourth team tight end right now.
Yeah.
6'7" or 6'6", 295-pound tight end. I'd like to see him go out for a ball.
Well, we actually had a photo on the site of him catching passes in warm-ups. So anyway, hey, we're here at Paternoville. As you can see, there's a lot of tents already here. I'm guessing a couple dozen tents. If you're coming in for the game this weekend, be sure to stop by the FOS tailgate, Lions Den, from 6 till 9 p.m. Pat Boland's one of the celebrities who's always there, as well as Keith Goon-Conlon, and I even make an appearance. I know there's something called the Rally in the Valley going on, so if you intend to go up to that, stop at the Den before, after, whatever. If you're not into pep rallies, be sure to join us. Anyway, hey, we're going to wrap up on that note. Pat, as usual, thanks for joining us.
Hey, no problem.
For Pat Boland of ESPN Radio 1450 here in State College, I'm Mark Brennan of Fight on State. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.